Hello, and thanks for joining today's webinar for CIEE's Teach in South Korea program. My name is Luke. I'll be walking you through the presentation today. To get started, let's take an overview of what we'll cover. We'll begin with an introduction to CIEE and myself, and who am I and who do I work for. We'll look at some of the reasons why people teach abroad and why it can be a really rewarding and fun experience. We'll zoom in and look at the details for South Korea, including public schools and private schools, and what the jobs look like. We'll talk about different ways to get there and why you might want to choose CIEE to help you. We'll talk about the role of TEFL, Teaching English as a Foreign Language, that series of training and certificates that's relevant to this opportunity. And finally, we'll have time for questions at the end of the presentation. Let's get started. So my name again is Luke Beland. I've been working for CIEE for about 4.5 years. Before that, I was actually teaching English in a different country. I got teaching jobs in Amman, Jordan, and worked there for 2 years as an English instructor, which was a really great experience. I studied Arabic language and Middle Eastern culture and history at university, so I was continuing some of those language studies by taking that experience abroad, which was really great. CIEE has been around a lot longer. We just celebrated our 70th anniversary. So we started running university study abroad programs just after World War II. They sent students over to Europe on ships, and we've been growing and evolving since then. Lots of different programs and lots of different directions, but we've been doing programs teaching English abroad for about 20 years. I like to start these presentations off with a question. Where will your journey take you? All of us are very diverse, of course, with lots of different backgrounds, different goals, and that reflects on the experiences people have as they sign up and go teach English abroad. So we'll take a look at some of the motivations people might have. As we're doing this, ask yourself this question. Why do you want to teach abroad? You've signed up for this webinar for a reason, of course, but it's good to have a good understanding of what you hope to accomplish and what you hope to get with your teaching position. That'll help us match you up with a program that's a good fit. South Korea is, of course, our destination and our topic today. It's a really interesting country. It's an economic powerhouse, one of the top 15 economies in the world, despite being a pretty small country about the size of Indiana. It has a very long history, going back thousands of years. It has its own distinct identity and heritage and culture, some very strong traditions that are very different from Europe and the United States in the West. At the same time, it is a very modern place with the fastest internet in the world, some of the best tech. Samsung and LG, of course, are household names all around the world. As you can see, there's a lot of high-rise and very modern buildings. South Korea is a place where you have modern and tradition working side by side. Some of the traditional values, like the hierarchy and deference and indirect communication and saving face, all those things apply and really influence the way things are done, even at a modern company or a modern school. So it's a really great opportunity. The economic wealth means that it can be very lucrative and pay well to be an English teacher in South Korea, but there's also a lot of really great language and culture and history and food to explore. I like to emphasize that the experience of teaching abroad is a very social one. It's grounded in people. If you're a teacher, it means you have students, and you automatically on your very first day of work are going to have that relationship with a bunch of Korean people, which is not something you get if you study abroad, not something you get if you just travel and visit a place. Teaching abroad means that you have a community of Koreans who are there throughout your year. In addition to your students, of course, you have your colleagues, your coworkers. Some of them will be foreign teachers like yourself, but a lot of them will be Korean. You'll get to know them. And of course, your supervisors and even the parents of your students might come into the picture. So lots of layers of community. On top of all of that, What you see here in this picture is a CIEE Teach in South Korea orientation. These are peers and people who are going through this experience together. And that's a great value of going with a CIE program is you're really not alone. Of course, you have CIEE there to support you, but we also gather all of our participants together, or most of the participants together, to have these orientation weekends and networking events within the first month or so of your program. We'll bring everybody up to Seoul and have a hotel and meals and train tickets paid for, so that the CIE teachers can come together. You'll get to know them a little bit before you travel through our online orientation, but you'll meet them in person and maybe make some new friendships with your fellow peers on the program. People who are coming home from South Korea often say that the food is something they're going to miss the most. A lot of it is spicy or sour or kimchi or different from what you're used to, but once you find some things you like, it can be really, really delicious. So for people who are foodies, Seoul and other cities in South Korea have a lot of traditional Korean cuisine, of course, but also you'll find other restaurants from across Asia, other cuisines represented. And if you like coffee shops with cakes shaped like cute little animals, of course, you can find those there. Everything's got a little face and a smiley on it. A little bit less tangible are the skills that you develop as a teacher, as someone teaching abroad. Even whether or not you're planning to have education be your career, these are a list of skills that you can easily develop by teaching as English in another country. When you're teaching abroad, you need to navigate a new workplace, a new set of expectations, bridging cultures, and you'll be experimenting with different styles of learning, different styles of communication, and it'll be up to you to look around and assess the situation and decide if it's time for you to take charge and take the initiative and be sort of confident and independent and do things on your own, or whether it's appropriate for you to be patient and flexible and go with the flow and let somebody else's plans prevail. This is a balancing act, and it's never perfect, but we like to think of teaching abroad as exercising this muscle of workplace skills and personal skills like public speaking and planning ahead. These are skills that will develop and will benefit you in any career, whether you're planning to go into teaching or business or any kind of sales or anything really. And of course, the language and culture feature prominently on people's reasons for traveling abroad and doing something like this. You can study a language and study a culture from a book or from a foreign classroom all you want, but that all changes and you take it to the next level once you actually set foot in the country and immerse yourself and start living there. Korean language is relatively easy to learn. They use an alphabet, so you won't be memorizing thousands of characters like you do for Chinese. You can learn how to sound out words in Korean pretty quickly, and then slowly, as you learn what more of them mean, you'll get comfortable speaking and listening and understanding them. So those are sort of our fun pictures, our motivations for teaching abroad. To zoom in and talk about the details a little bit, what will you actually be doing as a teacher on the South Korea program? Well, you'll be teaching English as a second language. Your students are going to be primary school students, so young kids at kindergarten, elementary school, maybe middle school level. So don't expect to be working with adults or high school students. The pay is very good. The starting salary is 2 million won per month, which comes out to around 1,800 US dollars per month. The contracts are for 12 months, so that's the length of your contract, 365 days. At the end of that, you'll get a bonus equal to 1 month's pay. Again, around $1,800, maybe $1,900 if you have a slightly higher salary. You're basically getting paid 13 months of very good salary for 12 months of work. On top of that, you get a rent-free place to live. These are studio apartments provided by your employer. It'll come with basic furnishings, so chairs and tables and refrigerators and beds, yes. Nice pillows and curtains and microwaves you might be buying at the local home goods store. But this makes a huge deal. If you're not paying rent, if you're only paying a minimal kind of utility fee per month, most of that salary is going to go right to your pocket or right to your travel adventures around South Korea or even that part of Asia. Or you can bring it home in savings, or you can transfer it to a U.S. bank and make payments on student loans. So it's disposable income. You can choose what you'd want to use it for. And on top of all that, one-way airfare is included. Your school will either buy a flight for you or they'll reimburse you after you arrive for your one-way flight to South Korea. Altogether, this is a really generous and lucrative package, which is why a lot of people choose to teach in South Korea. To zoom in a little bit more, there are two types of schools where you might work in South Korea, public schools and private schools. We place teachers at both. We've got good success and good reviews from people in both places. We wanted to highlight some of the differences. Teachers basically get to choose where they're going to apply, and different people choose different school types based on what's important to them. Each one has their pros and cons. Public schools are competitive, especially for fall seasons. It's very important to apply early. We usually set our application deadline earlier for people who are angling for public schools, just to give them more time to prepare. Part of the reason they're competitive is because they're popular, and part of the reason they're popular is because there are fewer working hours and longer vacations. It's about 30 teaching hours per week at a private school compared to maybe 20, 25 teaching hours per week at a public school. And the vacations at public schools are about twice as long overall. Public school teachers will have a Korean co-teacher in the classroom with them. They might not be leading the class, so people should still be prepared to be lead teachers, but they'll have a little bit of support, which is good because the class sizes are bigger at public schools, as you can see. Public schools give you a flat rate transportation allowance instead of reimbursement, which is simple and predictable, which is nice. Public schools, they've been facing budget cuts in recent years. So it used to be one foreign teacher per school. Now it's one foreign teacher per several schools. People usually rotate between 2, 3, or even 4 schools in their weekly schedule. Each school, they're going to have a different co-teacher. So they're not going to see the same kids many times per week. They're spreading out the teachers to bring a little bit of English supplement, English education to a larger number of students. Private schools are less competitive because there's more of them. They often hire 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 foreign teachers per school, which means there's a lot of jobs available. There's no co-teacher, but the class sizes are smaller. Working hours are a little longer. Vacations are a little shorter. These schools, about half of them will buy a one-way flight for you before you travel. The other half will reimburse you for your one-way flight within the first month or so after you arrive. To be eligible for this program, to be accepted and to find a job, you'll need to have a bachelor's degree. Any field is okay. You should be a native speaker of English with citizenship of the US, UK, Ireland, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, or South Africa. And you must be able to prepare a criminal background check that is 100% clear. They have a zero tolerance policy for criminal history for teaching visas in South Korea. For public schools, you must also have one of these 3 credentials, and you have to have it ready by the time you get on a plane to South Korea. We're talking about a TEFL certificate, a bachelor's degree of education, or a valid teaching license that's valid for the duration of your program. Private schools, or hagwons as they're called, are a little bit more flexible. They strongly prefer those things. If you have teaching experience, maybe the TEFL is not a strict requirement. If you have degrees related to teaching like English or education, of course, that's very helpful. If you're coming in with no experience, a degree in like biology or political science, you haven't done volunteer work, we do really recommend that people sign up for the TEFL certificate, even if it isn't a strict requirement. Another way to compare those two school types is by locations. Public schools generally give you less control over location. When you submit an application to their program, you can request a province, you can put a preference. It's not a guarantee of being placed there. They'll reveal your province assignment pretty late in the game. Before you travel to South Korea, you'll know what province you're going to. You still won't know what city within that province. That's something that gets revealed at the end of EPIC's orientation in country. Private schools have a very different approach. Instead of applying to a big centralized agency, you're applying to individual schools. So we'll show your profile around to schools that match your preferences, your description. When one of them asks to interview you, we'll tell you where it is, the details of the job, and ask if you'd like to proceed with the interview. So that gives you a much fine-grained idea of where exactly you'd be going. You'd know that up front, basically. You can see the map on the right shows where our private school placements are typically concentrated. The darker pins represent higher concentrations of placements. Seoul is that big cluster on the upper left. So you'll see we place some teachers right in central Seoul, but a lot of teachers in a circle around it, in sort of the donut-shaped province. On the left map, you can see it's called Gyeonggi Province, and then Seoul is the donut hole in the middle of the donut. We also have placements in some big cities in the south, like Gwangju, Daegu, and then the Busan area. So lots of great urban placements in South Korea. Nobody's being placed out in the woods, out in the mountains, unless they really want to. It's a pretty urban, well-connected country with great public transit. So lots of great opportunities there. A few final considerations to wrap up our comparison. EPIC, as you may have gathered, has an extra application. So you'll submit an application to CIEE, you'll get accepted, you'll get set up with your TEFL course. Then you also have to prepare an application for EPIC's program. They have a very specific template. We'll help you with it. We've got instructions written up to share our experience and our tips for that. EPIC is picky about letters of recommendation. You can find some more information about that on your CIEE application, the program school types comparison handout, or you can just email me and I can send you some details. EPIC requires special documentation if you're homeschooled, if you've taught English before, if you've had teaching experience before full-time, or if you were educated grades 7 through university in a non-English speaking country. They want to make sure that your education was conducted in English. EPIC has an orientation on arrival. So all the public school teachers who are placed throughout the whole country will gather together. EPIC will meet you at the airport and get you set up. Private schools, these are run as for-profit businesses, as the name implies. In South Korea, students usually go to both types of schools, whereas in the US, they would pick one or the other. What that means is people go to public schools during normal school hours, 8 to 3 maybe. Private schools often have some shifts, like 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. or 2 p.m. to 10 p.m., so that students can leave their public school, get a snack, and turn around and go to school a second time in order to meet the country's really high education expectations for achievement. Private school schedules, they often bounce around. You might have 3 evening shifts like that, and then 2 daytime shifts, 9 to 5. It does vary by school, and it does change somewhat frequently based on the school's schedule and the school's needs. So that's a difference in the school types there, is what hours you'd be working. Private schools are a lot more flexible about things like recommendation letters, where they don't have any special rules, or the TEFL certificate. They have a common practice of hiring teachers who have a TEFL certificate in progress. Since I know it takes a while to complete, and they're happy to have teachers come and get started even before the whole certificate course is done. For private schools, we encourage people to prepare a short video introduction. We have tips for that after your CIEE application is complete to help you set that up. It is optional if you're not interested. Private schools don't have a very strong orientation like EPIC does. People usually arrive and get a tour of the building, and then by the next day or so, they might have a little bit of observation, but within a day or two, they're usually expected to start teaching. That's another reason why the TEFL course is so important, just so that teachers have that preparation before they travel. We also have some really strong online pre-departure materials to help fill that gap and help people know what to expect before they arrive at a private school. And the private schools will pick you up at the airport, and because their arrival dates are staggered and not everybody arrives at the same time, but within about a month of arriving, we'll invite you up to Seoul for one of those CIEE orientation events. The public school teachers get invited too as an extra orientation and networking opportunity. So that's the deal. That's what it's like to work in South Korea. The next question is, how do you get yourself there? How do you go from where you are today to stepping off a plane, ready to start a teaching assignment? We've described 3 ways here on this slide. The first way, if you have a friend who's working there and they can recommend a great school and give you some tips on the process and you're willing to figure out the rest yourself, you can go on your own. That's obviously a little bit more challenging, and not everybody has those things lined up. In South Korea, there's also a lot of free recruiters that don't charge a fee and promise to help place people at good jobs and get them set up for the experience. They can probably help you a little bit through the visa process and give you some instructions and tips. What we found is because they're not being paid by the participant, they're receiving a commission check from the schools where they place people. Their support, if any kind of conflicts or issues come up, is sometimes a little bit, leaves things to be desired. If there's a conflict between a teacher and a school, they're generally going to take the school's side, since that's the party that's actually paying them to do their business. That's not to say that they're disreputable or sneaky or bad, but it's just important to make sure that you know what you're getting yourself into and what the limitations of those services are. The final option, of course, is to use a program like CIEE. What we've done is we've taken a whole bunch of services and packaged them together to help people find a job, but also be prepared and successful, since just finding the job by itself might not be enough to do that. We do charge a program fee for our services, but the bottom line is we work for you. We've designed a package specifically to help make this, not just a job, but a rewarding and meaningful experience where you can be successful. Here's another way of looking at it. The job is the central element. Without the job, none of the rest of it is all that important or useful, but we've found that the job by itself, just getting a job and not being adequately prepared for it, can lead to really negative experiences. And you've probably heard of people telling stories of really bad experiences in South Korea online or on forums. Some of those, of course, are from schools that are dishonest or disreputable, but a lot of the times it's teachers who just haven't been told what to expect or how to get ready. So our program is designed to do exactly that. We've got really good pre-departure support from our U.S. office, working with your coordinator here. We have 24/7 support in country after you arrive. So you can call up our representative there and ask for advice, or if there's an emergency, you can call them and help them. They can help you get back on track or give you the services you need. The TEFL course is obviously an important part of our program package. It's required for a lot of the jobs and really advisable for most of the rest, for people who aren't already trained or experienced teachers. Our program also includes really detailed pre-departure materials, whether it's visa instructions, interview tips, how to make a video introduction, or a really nice pre-departure package we've assembled with advice and from former teachers on logistics topics like phones and banking, to cultural things of how do those cultural differences play out in the workplace? What are the do's and don'ts of etiquette? What are some tips for starting a new job at a public school or at a private school? We've actually had so much information to share, we built it into an online course format where you can move through chapters on each topic and access that information in writing or in some cases by video, pictures. So it's a more interactive, engaging course with some discussions and assignments. There's also the orientation that we talked about, which happens within your first month. The program also includes travel and emergency medical insurance for U.S. applicants. And we have an alumni network. I have to update that actually. We're up to about 350,000 people who are veterans of our exchange programs in all directions. So if you're eyeing an international career, it's a great thing to be part of the CIEE alumni network. There are people from the U.S., people from lots of other countries as well. It's a really interesting and unique set of connections, especially for someone with an international career lined up. Our last sort of content we'd like to discuss is our TEFL course, which is included in the Teaching South Korea program, our default option. For folks who don't need it, the Teaching South Korea Basics offers the same placements, the same support and services, just minus the TEFL course at a slightly lower fee. The TEFL course is online, which makes it pretty easy to access. Sections start every 2 weeks. And we keep our course sizes pretty small, so 13 students and 1 instructor. So you'll be getting some personalized attention. Each week there's about 12 or 13 hours of content to go through. Some of it's readings, some of it is videos or activities, assignments. There's also a once a week discussion where people will review all that material and discuss it as a class. This is like a discussion section led by a TA at a traditional university lecture course. Finally, there's 11 weeks of those online discussions and online materials. And then the last element is 20 hours of practice or observation in your local communities. This is volunteer time to let you try out some of these concepts and techniques in practice in the real world. We call this the practicum. When that's all rolled together and all the requirements are complete, you'll earn the TEFL certificate, which is valid for life, recognized around the world, great for meeting employer requirements in places like South Korea or visa requirements in places like China. So it's a really good investment and a very valuable part of the program. Another question to think about is when? When is this all going to happen? When's this going to come together? We're just reaching our final deadline for our spring 2018 applications. That's December 1st. So if you really want to go to South Korea soon, let me know and I'll help you, but you'll need to move fast. Realistically, people who are planning ahead, our fall 2018 programs and spring 2019 programs are things you can plan ahead for. As you can see, the public schools, we've set a slightly earlier deadline, especially for the fall season, to help those teachers angling for an EPIC position get an early start and plenty of time to work on their applications so they can be among the first applications submitted to that program and be first in line. We'll be working on our fall 2018 programs starting in February, March, April. The private schools start hiring in May, June, July. And then the start dates will be mostly in August, with a few people arriving in September as well. Spring 2019, the start dates are concentrated in the last 2 weeks of February. And with that, we've come to the end of the presentation. So thanks for watching. First of all, I hope it was helpful. I'd like to take the rest of the time to answer any questions that people have. So I'm going to shut off the mic here for a minute. Please look up the questions tool on your webinar features and use that to type in any questions you'd like to know. You can ask me what it was like to teach abroad. You can ask questions about what it's like to live in South Korea or teach there, about the school types. You can ask me about the program or the application, what pieces you need, what's included, what's not, how it all works. So I'm going to take a quick break here, but go ahead and type that in and send your questions to me. What would you like to know? Okay, we've had a couple questions come in. Let me see if I can run down and shed some light on them. This person asks, they have a 60-hour TEFL course and a master's degree in English. What kind of jobs can they get? Or do they need to take the 150-hour bigger TEFL course? From that description, I think that the EPIC public school jobs are still out of reach, unless you have a teaching license or a bachelor's degree in education. EPIC has a 100-hour minimum for their TEFL courses, so they're not going to accept a 60-hour course. Private schools, if you have some kind of a TEFL course and a master's degree, which looks good, that sounds like a pretty compelling set of qualifications. So I don't think you necessarily need to take the 150-hour TEFL course. Especially if you're feeling confident about, tackling English grammar or working with kids, if you've got some experience or background with that, then and you're feeling confident, then yeah, it's totally optional and would not be a requirement. You can also submit an application for the Teach in South Korea Basics program, and once I look at your application, if I have any concerns or recommendations, I would definitely let you know those things, and you'd still have the opportunity to upgrade and add the bigger TEFL course if that seemed like a good idea. Good question. Another person asks about what are teacher experiences like in South Korea? What do they have to say about positive things, negative things? I haven't taught in South Korea myself. I worked in Jordan teaching English, but I have worked with hundreds of teachers who did teach in English through our program in South Korea. So I feel pretty confident answering that question. Some of the positives, the things people really like about the program, first are the kids. They're awfully cute. Your class sizes are relatively small. They're young children, so it's like elementary school. They're very energetic. They love to sing and dance and play games. And it's not hard to find really cute pictures and videos of these students to show. Now, what I mean when I say that, you can see some on our YouTube channel for South Korea. That's a plus. The pay is definitely a plus. It's pretty much our most lucrative program for entry-level teachers, South Korea. If people say, I want to make a lot of money so I can make payments on student loans, I want to bring home a bunch of savings, I want to finance amazing travel to all these cool places, South Korea is one of the best places to do that. Another positive I've heard a lot is just the cities and the amenities that they have. If you would feel more comfortable living close to a shopping mall or a cinema, if you want to go bowling sometime, if you want to have access to like Starbucks and familiar brands, then South Korea has those things. Even if you're not in Seoul, South Korea still has those things. It's a very urbanized, very developed country with a lot of overlap with the U.S. So those are real pluses, I would say. As far as minuses, the first one that pops to mind is the workload. South Korea has a higher number of teaching hours and a higher level of teaching responsibilities than any of our other countries. I think that goes along with the high salary, is expectation to work a lot. 30 hours a week, split over 5 days at a private school, means 6 hours a day. So that's 6 classes a day if they're 1-hour classes. It's, 8 classes if they're 45-minute classes. So you're not going to have many free periods. That's a downside and can be pretty draining for some people, especially if it hits them by surprise. So our whole program is designed to help people avoid surprises and know what to expect and be ready for it, which is one of the biggest ingredients for success, even if there is a heavy workload. If you're looking for something that's a little more relaxed, the Teach in China program has good salaries and a lot lighter workloads. Teach in Thailand, the class sizes get a bit big in Thailand, but still a more relaxed workload than South Korea. So those are sort of other alternatives. I think other issues I hear for South Korea would be plans changing with very little notice or no notice sometimes. Difficulty of getting clear instructions in advance, clear information about schedules and holiday timings. People struggle sometimes getting feedback from supervisors. What can I do better? What can I do differently? There's a reluctance to tell people directly what they need to do. A preference for indirect communication. Those things are extremely common for anyone who's teaching English in Asia. And I'd say indirect communication is maybe more common in Asia than other places, but I taught in Jordan, and I had to really deal with lack of transparency and plans changing all the time. And I just had to learn to be flexible and adapt to that and kind of roll with the changes. That really is a pretty standard feature of teaching abroad. If you want like a strict disciplined schedule 8 months in advance, you're not going to get it. You have to find a different profession, I think. Those are things that people find challenging, but absolutely challenges that can be overcome. Let's see, another question. This person's asking about co-teachers at private schools and how do you handle class management or emergencies if there's not a co-teacher in the room with you. I think part of the benefit of having you there is that you don't speak Korean. It will help push these young students to talk to you in English, which is, it sounds harder than it is, I think. These are young kids who have been studying English for a little while already, and can respond to a lot of kind of simple commands. And a good teacher is able to communicate even if there's a word that people don't know, and explain it by circumlocution, by teaching around the word and giving context, using gestures, using pictures, using examples. If you want the class to sit down or stand up, those are pretty easy things to mime. If you want them to open their books, you can use a hand gesture. If students are, leaving the classroom and going somewhere else, you can accomplish that even without a shared language. So we can't predict all the different situations that you'll encounter in the classroom, and if you do need help, of course, there's other co-workers around who have either been there for longer or who are Korean, and you can get help from them if needed. I hope that answers the question. Another question, when you move to South Korea, are there other teachers in your apartment complex? I would say maybe. I don't think this is true in most cases. I'd say maybe 30 or 40% of the time there's other foreigners in your apartment complex. People live in high-rise towers and small apartments. Outside of central Seoul, the apartments are going to be walking distance from your school. The schools want you to have easy access. In some of the biggest, most dense and expensive districts, they might have you take a bus ride of, 20, 30, 40 minutes, but that would be it. What that means is not all the foreign teachers are housed in the same building. So you will have an apartment to yourself. It's a one-person apartment. I don't think the expectation should be that there's going to be other teachers from your school living next door, for example. You'll all be pretty close together. I mean, you'll all have access to the school, which means you all live within striking distance of each other to make friends and hang out and have dinner or go meet up somewhere in the city. But you're not necessarily living together. That said, if you're going with a friend or a significant other who's applying for the program with you, many of the schools, private schools anyway, will be able to provide shared housing for the two of you if you do want to live together. Okay. Well, I'm coming up on the end of my time for the webinar here. If you have any other questions, we'll make this last call for questions. Type them in, send them my way. Otherwise, I want to thank you for joining the webinar. I hope this has been helpful and informative. My phone number, my direct line, and my email address are on the screen. You can also find them on our website at ciee.org/teach. I'm recording this presentation, and I'll be able to share it out probably by tomorrow if you do want to review it. I'm sure that other questions will pop up, and please feel most free and welcome to contact me for more information. I'm happy to help. I wish you all the best for your applications, and I hope that's a pretty smooth process, and I look forward to reading them and really look forward to working with you to put together an awesome experience in South Korea. Thanks again for signing up, and have a great day, everybody.